Imagine this. Let's say you're in a situation where you invited your friend over in your house, and he says that he's hungry.
Bro, you got something to eat in your house? I'm getting kind of starving.
So like what any good friend would do, you decided to head over to the kitchen and cook a delicious, warm meal for your friend. You serve it to him down the living room and he took a bite. But suddenly, your friend had a sudden allergic reaction from an ingredient of your dish that you didn't know that he is allergic to. With you being shocked and concerned of your friend, you rush him immediately to the hospital. After your friend received treatment, you might feel guilty sitting next to his bedside. Maybe even embarrassed and disappointed of yourself that you accidentally put your friend in a state of harm. But your friend, being the absolute intellectual giga chat he is, gave you the benefit of the doubt that, hey, maybe you didn't know that he's actually allergic to peanuts. And at the end of the day, you're just a caring friend trying to feed someone. Heck, you even rush him to the ER after collapsing right in your living room. So basically, you're still a good friend, but a pretty horrible and careless chef. And that situation right here is exactly what Immanuel Kant wanted to convey in his idea of morality. The idea that morality of an action lives in the intention behind it and not the result. Let's explore more in Immanuel Kant's moral principle and philosophy, deontology. So what exactly is deontology? The term itself comes from the Greek word deon, which means duty. For Immanuel Kant, that is a duty that you are obliged through intent and reason. Deontology is a moral theory that says that rightness or wrongness of an action is determined by the intent of the action itself and not by whatever the result or consequence could come out of it. Kant believed that morality isn't just something you feel your way through, but rather something you reason your way through. And if you manage to reason correctly, you arrive at a set of duties that apply universally to everyone, everywhere, and at all times. The foundation of deontology begins with the concept of goodwill. Kant argued that the only thing in this world that is unconditionally good is a goodwill. Not intelligence, not talent, not even kindness, because one could argue that any of these things can be used for bad purposes. A goodwill is the intention to do what is right simply because it is right, not because it benefits you, nor because it makes you look good, but purely because it is out of duty and of pure heart. Now going back to the intro, the reason why you fed your hungry friend is because you genuinely care about the capacity of his stomach. And that is ultimately a good will. But in the end, the outcome was a mess, but the will behind it was good. And if your friend happens to be Immanuel Kant, then that's pretty much the only thing that truly matters. Now we reach into the heart of the theory of deontology, which is the categorical imperative. A categorical imperative is a command that is unconditional. It doesn't say or guarantee that if you do this, then you'll get a good outcome. It says to just do this, and that's it. No ifs, no expectations, no buts, no exceptions. This is Kant's ultimate moral law that governs all rules, and he formulated it in different ways. But for this video, we're just going to focus on understanding his ethics. The golden formula of deontology is never use a person as a mere means, or in Kant's words, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in yourself or in any other person, as always as an end and never merely as a means, which is pretty much similar to the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Every person in this world has inherent dignity, and people deserve to be treated as someone that matters, and not as a tool you use to get what you want. The moment you reduce a person to a means to your end only, or as a tool to achieve something for yourself only, then this violates Kant's fundamental moral principle.
But bro, if I'm grocery shopping, does that mean I'm using the cashier to pay and get what I want from the supermarket?
Well, the answer is yes, but it's not really a bad thing. Not like you're using the cashier to be exploited for your own gain. There is a difference by what Kant mean by using a person by means and by mere means. Using someone as a means is completely fine. For example, you use your professor as a means to learn, or you use your driver as a means to get somewhere. That's pretty much how society functions. The line is crossed when you use someone as a mere means, meaning you involve them in your plan in a way they could not consent to or that they have no knowledge about your true intentions. You're not treating them as a person with respect anymore, but rather you're treating them as a tool to get what you wanted. The key word here is consent. Could this person, if fully informed, agree to how you're treating them? And well, if the answer is no, then you've pretty much crossed the line. Now, to actually apply this principle, you need to understand something important to Kant called a maxim. No, not that kind of maxim, no. A maxim is the general intention or role behind your action, stripping away its specific purpose or details. Instead of the action, I lied to get out of trouble, the maxim would be, I will lie whenever it benefits me, putting that purpose from something specific to you to something just general. A maxim is like a general or universal principle to live by, that you may think that all people would agree on. And that is something that Kant puts on trial, not as an individual unique act, but the rule and judgment of it as a whole. To test whether the consensus of your maxim reaches the criteria to being generally moral, Kant begins to ask you, what if everyone followed this rule? If universalizing it leads to ruining society or the world will generally fall apart, then the maxim fails to be moral, and so does the action by itself. A maxim essentially exposes your behavior beyond just your circumstance. Yes, you did something for your own specific reasons, but it also reveals what you're truly willing to do when it serves your intentions. And that is exactly what Immanuel Kant judges. Now that we understand Kant's framework, let's put it to the test with a real case. In May 20, 2013, a man named Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor, did something that shook the whole world. He leaked classified government documents revealing that the United States government was conducting a massive secret surveillance program. And these documents range from around 9,000 to 10,000 of those documents, collecting phone records, emails, and internet search data and activity of millions of ordinary US citizens, without their knowledge and without given consent. The United States government justified this for national security and to protect the country from foreign terrorism. Now, based on the government's promises, that may sound reasonable, right? Here's where the moral principles of deontology comes into play. Every single citizen in America is being spied on and was never given the choice to consent. They were silently enrolled into a program that treated them not as people with rights and dignity, but rather as data points for a national security agenda. Pretty much the government is using the American people as a mere means. And using a mere means, according to Immanuel Kant, is a fundamental moral violation, no matter how good the intention behind it was. Now, when Edward Snowden exposed this, the government did what everyone would do when they feel threatened. They charged him with espionage and treason, forcing him to flee the country and live in exile in Russia, where he remains to this day chilling with the Russian bears. Now, some could argue that Edward Snowden himself violated his duty, that leaking classified information broke his oath, endangered lives, and also betrayed his country by the act of treason. And from a certain angle, that's a fair point. But what most people agree on is that Edward Snowden was the only person in that entire situation actually following Immanuel Kant's rules, because the US government was involving millions of people in a scheme without their knowledge, and that Edward Snowden gave them back what Kant would consider the most fundamental thing, which is the truth, which is the ability for the United States citizens to make an informed decision or to be informed about how they're being treated by their own government, which is a justifiably moral maxim according to Kantian principles. That if a higher up institution does something wrong, especially when fundamental rights are being violated, then they should be called out to be accountable and be transparent on what they're doing, especially when the rights and privacy of its own citizens are being violated. So was Edward Snowden a traitor for leaking government secrets? Or was he the only one in the room who refuses to use people as a mere means? That's the question Kant leaves us with. And honestly, it doesn't really have a clear answer, which is exactly why the case of Edward Snowden is a perfect case study for deontology. At the end of the day, Kant simply asks one thing from all of us, which is obviously to treat every person you encounter as someone who genuinely matters, not as a tool or not as a stepping stone. Whether you're making food for a hungry friend or fighting against a national security agency, your intentions and dignity you extend to others is what defines the morality of your actions. And it feels like that if Kant was alive today, then something tells me that he has a lot to say on what's going on with the world right now. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for watching.
Sir, tapos na po.